What is happening? What is happening, everybody, and welcome to Serial Sundays, part 2 of our Fred and Rose West trauma experience, I guess is what we would call it. The traumatic tale. Let me just cue in Mo here and get us started. How is everybody doing? First of all, big shout out to everybody who's been super patient with me whilst I've gone through my phase. If you follow me on Snapchat, you'll know all about my phase that I've been through. It's been shit, but we're past that now. So let's get crack-a-lacking. And of course, Serial Sundays, you know why you're here. We're here for part 2 of Fred and Rosemary West, continuing the triggering journey. Let's see who we've got off the bat. We've got Aiko, Solway, Debbie, Local Jackie, Sister Holly, Janie, Local Bottom, Randy, Jordan's here. How are you? Croar 11 times X, we'll go with that. Quizmaster J, Run Around, what is happening? Malbull, wow. Spawn, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Hope you're all doing well. Catherine's here as well. Laura T, how are you all? Randington, it is all good. There's Heath as well. What's happening? Ireland EVR, what is happening? What's happening? So as always, Michelle, how are you? As always, we are here with Mo and we're going to continue on. But before we do that, how has your week been, Mo? What's been happening with you?
Are you speaking to me? Sorry, I'm in a dream.
Yeah, I'm speaking to you, man. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm just saying, how's your week been?
Flicker in my kitchen over there just now going,
yeah.
What is
looking
going
at the
on?
shiny.
Yeah, I've been good. I've been doing a bit more gardening again. Chopped down massive branches of trees today that were blocking sunlight coming into my garden. Nice. And yeah, it's pretty good. Sorry, I was totally in a dream there. Totally in a dream.
That's all right.
It was bizarre, just sort of like that moment, you know.
Oh
yeah, I'm on a stream. Shit, yeah.
I actually brought the old recliner up, and I've been using that as my gaming chair. And I was just doing a mixer stream there, and it was just too comfy. There's just no way you could sit and just. It's too comfy. It's too comfy. You need that consistent back pain, and as if shit's digging into you, keep your brain kicking.
Yeah, it's the first time I've actually leaned back on one of the dining room chairs and thought, this is actually quite comfy.
Yeah.
Usually I'm sitting forward on a cushion, sort of peering into my camera, going, Rose West, Fred. Oh my God, yes, it's the Wests tonight.
Yeah, it is.
This is last week we just set the stage, bro.
Yeah, we did, man.
We just set the stage.
It was just.
We're about to go down this thing. I hope everybody's got their kittens ready to cuddle because they're going to need them. They're going to need
it's spicy. Their kittens. It's spicy. It's shocking as well, because you just. I mean, if you knew nothing about this and you heard that there was a murderous couple and all the rest of it, for some reason your brain does automatically think that the guy's the worst out of the two for some reason. Like, I don't know why. It just does. Not necessarily at all.
Rose is definitely no Rosebud, I tell you that much right now. She is a serious loony. But I found out something that I never knew again today. And there's enough stuff in front of me just now. We'll see how far we get through it, because we've got a story to tell about a lassie called Caroline Roberts who survived. She was like 17 years old and she survived. We'll go into that. I'm going to do that first.
Well,
and then we're going to talk about everybody that they killed.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens after that, because I mean this is just crazy, the amount of stuff that I've got in front of me. I've got like another 20 pages of notes here in front of me, bro. It's ridiculous.
Nice. Well, everyone's saying bring on the trauma. I'm ready for the trauma. Can't wait. Well, let's do it. Let's not keep everybody waiting. I think
one thing before we start though, I had a couple of messages this week and also on your Discord, people wanting to know the fate of the Terrapin from last week's weird and wonderful story from the madhouse across the street.
Shit, the Terrapin, yeah.
And
oh man.
So if everybody's good and they're not crazy, we will talk about
Yes.
what happened to the Terrapin at the end, and I will
Yes.
tell you about the new tenant. Well, not the new, the old new tenant.
Yeah,
One that's not there
that's
again
it.
now. We'll talk about that story
You're
too.
doing well. That's exactly how you do it. It's the audience grab. See, you're learning the broadcast way.
Oh,
You throw it out there, you tease them, and then you save it for the end. I like that.
Well, we could say that
doing
I'm not doing it unless I get 50 more subscribers on my channel. But I'm not gonna do that.
That's it. That's it. But then you'll end up freaking getting tweeted, man. You end up getting tweeted. But
That's good.
yeah,
Right.
the turtle with the Terrapin, I should say. But yeah, here we go. So let's delve back into the realm of Fred and Rosemary West as I try and freaking fix this chair and see just exactly how disturbing they were. And as always, there's links in the link tree. Save 10%. Use code RAWON10 on Razor Wire Energy, and of course Hunt a Killer. Links are in description. Make sure you follow Mo. His link tree shouldn't be covered up when I do this. There we go, it's right there. And yeah, take it away, Mo. Tell us.
Right. Last week we journeyed to 25 Cromwell Street. It took us an hour and a half to set the stage for probably the most craziest married couple ever in British history when it comes to serial killer stuff. So I've kind of done this next chapter. I've named it at the top of my notes, 25 Cromwell Street, Home Sweet Home. Obviously not. But to understand what these people were like from last week, it was bad enough. But there's a young woman called Caroline Roberts, who was a victim of the Wests. And I'm going to tell you her story first, because this is the only person that we have any data, any details from in great detail of what the Wests were like to their victims. Okay, so whereas we have like the remains of their victims, where we have the digging up of their two gardens, okay, the house before they lived in Cromwell Street and the one in Cromwell Street as well, okay, we don't really have, what they did and the gruesome, macabre details that so many people are juicy about, right? But we do have it with Caroline Roberts. So I want to tell you her story. Brave Caroline Roberts is how she's always mentioned in every sort of article that I've read about her in the past week, and the videos as well. I've watched a couple of interviews with her as well. She was just a teenager when she was physically and sexually abused by the Wests in what came to be known as the House of Horrors. In 1972, they hired her as their children's nanny. They had picked her up one night from a country road where she was hitchhiking from Tewkesbury in her home. That was her home, onto somewhere else, basically going home after visiting her boyfriend, learning that she didn't have a good relationship with her dad. It was actually her stepfather, and she was looking for a job. The Wests, after picking her up as a hitchhiker, offered her a part-time job as their nanny to their 3 children in their house. And basically they promised that they would take her home each Tuesday to go and see her family and stuff. Just being charming and sort of family orientated. Yeah, we'll take you home. We're nice people. We really, really are nice people. Several days later, she moves into Cromwell Street, sharing a room with Anna Marie, who she was basically, that was one of their tenants, who was very withdrawn, very sort of like, just, well, withdrawn, quiet, worried about life, Rose had started to engage in prostitution by this time and explained to Caroline that she worked as a masseuse when she inquired about the steady stream of people coming in, both men and women, okay, because Rose catered for everybody. Why deny yourself half of life's pleasures? You know, that's what Rose was all about, and all the rest of it. But according to Owens as well, according to Caroline, Fred had also said that he was somebody who was a bit of an amateur surgeon and was, his actual words, according to Caroline, was a skilled abortionist. A skilled abortionist who was available if she ever needed to be serviced. Who in their right mind says shit like that? I mean, really? Okay, I'm a skilled abortionist to a young woman of 17 years old. If you ever get up the duff and you want to get rid of it, I can help you.
Yeah, that's a spicy introduction straight off the bat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're not even. She's not even been abused yet, mate. She's not even. This is just the weird stuff at the start of Caroline's story.
Yeah.
She also basically took note in her statements to the police that Fred basically talked about sex most of the time. That was his thing. Sex, more sex, with a bit of spicy sex on top of it as well. Maybe some murder, death, killing included as well. But you know, we'll break Caroline in nice and easily and just talk about abortions and sex. Her suspicions to the sexual overtones were taken further when he boasted. When he boasted that the surgeries that he's performed on women, okay, they were so happy with the service that he provided that they had sex with him as a reward. You know, wow, what a weirdo. Okay, so Caroline eventually became the sort of, not so much the victim at this point, the sort of like the West were starting to make sexual advances towards her, and she did not like this one bit at all. And she made it perfectly clear that she would be leaving and going back home. Now, obviously, with everything that was going on in the house, the prostitution, the way the children were looking, you know, a bit withdrawn as well, and a bit concerned, they considered Caroline a bit of a threat, as you can imagine, right? So they knew what her habits were. They knew that she would be hitchhiking to get home, and they basically put their heads together, came up with a plan to abduct her and do untold things to this poor young woman. So they, excuse me, they put the plan into action and went down the road that she would actually be hitchhiking on. Fred basically admitted later on that the specific intent of this abduction was sexual abuse. It was, no doubt about it, in his mind firmly, he was going to rape and torture Caroline. And also, Rose was as well. But to begin with, his plan, he didn't know whether Rose would want to be involved with it or not, because you've got to remember at this time, they've only hidden a body together. All right, they've not actually killed anybody together as of yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, they've only hidden the body of Fred's stepdaughter.
Yeah,
the one that was in the coal shed.
That's
remember?
right. Yeah. So up to this point, it's just Rose that's pulled the trigger in the House of Horrors, right? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So it's 1-0. One
and
nil.
Rose was only what, 17 or 18 when she did that as well.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
It's not like she's. It's
crazy how different she looks when she's younger as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Okay, so they're traveling to go on. They know where she's going to be, right? They know that on certain days she's going to be on this particular road. So they see her. They stop the car and they say, "Look, we're really, really sorry for the way we behaved. Can we give you a lift home?" Now, Caroline, obviously, you know, she's a young woman, believed, you know, when you've got two people that are reasonably charming and they've only made advances towards them, right, okay, I'll give you another chance. And she believed that their apologies were honest. And maybe that this is her own words, okay? She actually believed that she'd simply mistaken their earlier intentions. That's a quote from her. So she jumped in the car to get a lift, and Rose joined her in the back seat, wanting to have a wee girls' chat while Fred was driving. A wee girls' chat. That's what they call it these days. Basically, it didn't take Rose long to start to feel her up, to fondle her, to touch her inappropriately in the back seat of the car. And as Fred also asked her if she just had sex with her boyfriend that evening, and if she was still wet from that.
It's just so cringe. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just so cringe. Like, I mean, obviously it's beyond cringe. They're fucking lunatics. But could you imagine just being in a car and being like, are you still... I mean, it's just so cringe. It's so cringe.
It is. I mean, obviously Caroline feels the cringe from it all as well.
But I mean, it's so horrific that they're so void of saying that. I suppose if they've already decided they're going to rape and kill someone, I can't imagine that niceties would be the first thing on their mind, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. It's like you're right. They're devoid of any normal behavioural patterns. I mean, there's not even an alarm bell in their brains thinking this is wrong. You know, that's what gets me. At no point do they stop. They just don't stop. Caroline starts to sort of say, no, let's go and just stop this, okay? You need to stop the car. You need to let me out. I don't want this. So Fred does stop the car, turns round, looks at her in the back seat, refers to her as a fucking bitch, and punches her repeatedly in the face until she's unconscious. Okay? Then Rose ties her up and gags her with a scarf in her mouth and duct tape around her mouth. Now, she's lucky she didn't suffocate from that in itself.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just once again the total lack of concern for all freaking life that these two have. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. I think they probably would have cared more about their pet dog than the way they treat people, to be perfectly honest.
Very possibly.
Caroline's next sort of statement stuff comes when she's talking to the police, and that she was basically drugged when she got back to the Cromwell Street, and then she was gagged again and subjugated to a prolonged and violent sexual assault from both Fred and Rose. Now, the next part here is taken from Caroline's statements, and it's truly not for the faint-hearted. So, trigger alert, alright, seriously. At one stage, this is me reading from it, okay? At one stage, Fred remarked that my clitoris was unusual, and then he lashed my genitals with a leather belt. When I screamed, Rose again smothered me with a pillow and further restrained me about the neck, and then she went down on me, performing cunnilingus. Quickly realising the situation she was in, Caroline stopped resisting. She just stopped resisting and took it, because if she continued to resist, she kind of surmised that it was going to get more violent and more torturous. The next day, having heard the screams of Caroline, one of the children had knocked on the door where she was restrained. Fred had then basically threatened that he and his wife would keep Caroline locked up in the cellar and allow his black friends to abuse her if she didn't stick around. And then basically, when they'd finished having their fun, he would bury her beneath the paving stones of a Gloucester street. So there you go. This is where we are. She's had about 12 hours of sexual torture, sexual mental abuse, and finally she gives into it, right? Because she knows that's the easiest thing to do instead of fighting it, because if she continues to fight it, she is terrified for her life. Better to be alive, in a certain way of thinking about this, than to be tortured to death. Basically, Fred also said, according to Caroline, Fred said, this is her from her statement again, claimed that he'd killed hundreds of young girls, and basically said that Caroline was primarily brought to the house for Rose's pleasure and not for his. I would probably quite believe that, to be perfectly honest. Fred and Rose calmly asked Caroline whether she would consider returning to work as their nanny. You know, they've had their fun. They think she's okay with it. Hey, listen, listen, we had a great time last night. We want you to stay. Go and just stick around and look after the kids for a while.
Absolutely,
Let's do it.
Totally, man. I mean, that's normal passage of, abduct a woman, keep her hostage, hire her as a nanny.
It's insane. I know people that do that every day.
That's it. It's natural. It's just natural process. It's just crazy, though. I mean, it is crazy how
it's like
that is how the conversation would have went between them. That's how normal it would have been between them. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy,
it's
man.
Absolutely insane. But do you know what's the credit to this woman, all right? Because after the torture, after the rape, after the violence, after the desperation, after giving into it, after the mental breakdown, after everything that has happened, she actually saw this as an escape route. She agreed to it. She agreed to stay as the nanny, and basically started to clean the house almost straight away, and pushed her belief that she could convince them that she would be an extended member of the family.
Okay, damn.
Later that day, no, this I find that the strength of this woman.
Yeah, it's definitely fight or flight, and doing what you need to do for survival. Absolutely.
It's insane. It's insane. So later that day, Caroline was in a laundrette with Rose, and she escaped, and she got back home. And to be perfectly honest, she was too ashamed to turn around and tell anybody what had happened to begin with. And it wasn't until her mum had noticed bruises, lash marks, everything like that, that she basically took her daughter to the police. Now, the Wests were arrested and charged with assault, indecent assault, actual bodily harm, and rape. Can you believe that? They were actually charged with all this, and they appeared in court on the 12th of January 1973. Unfortunately, there was no support for victims in these days at all.
It's crazy.
And Caroline had decided that she could not face the ordeal of testifying in court. And they kind of got off with like far less charges. The charges were of sexual abuse were dropped, and the West had to plead guilty to the reduced charges of indecent assault and causing actual bodily harm. And wait for this, they were both fined £50. £50 was their punishment.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's outrageous.
How long ago was that? 50 years? 50 years?
That was 1973 that she was in court.
47 years, man. That's crazy that was... I mean, that is like not a long period of time in the grand scheme of things for things to be so backwards.
This is just the start of it, though. This is just the start. So the Wests basically walked free from court from that day, and Caroline tried to kill herself as a result of this. Now, unlike the other victims of the Wests, she was the only one to walk free, completely unscathed. Well, when we say unscathed, still alive. Okay. She never had an issue with telling her traumatic story later on in life, and she always felt really bad that she survived that survivor's guilt that people get, where so many people didn't survive at the hands of the Wests. Also, just now, although she didn't testify in her own rape and torture first time round, she was a key prosecution witness later on in Rose's trial in the 90s. Now, on the 18th of August 2016, this incredibly brave woman lost a fight to cancer, and she died of cancer. And I only found that out today, and that blew me away. And I thought, I have to turn around and use Caroline's story to start off tonight, because we don't know truly what happened to a lot of the victims. We know that they were killed and there was like torture involved and everything, but the details that I'm giving you just now, you have to understand, this was the Wests in their infancy of their rape, murder and pillaging spree over the years. They kind of got it refined, they kind of got it off to an incredible start with Caroline, but then far worse with other people, because when you hear about the evidence of what, not so much what happened, but how the bodies were found, and what parts of the bodies were missing, you have to remember everything that happened to Caroline, okay, has probably happened to the rest of their victims plus more, because these sort of people, they will get to a level of like a high for their violent sexual natures, and then they will have to up the game, and then up the game, and then up the game. So as things get more and more progressive within their lifestyles and how they attend to their victims, it just progressively gets worse. And that is the story of Caroline. Okay, we're now officially on the road to the trial. Okay, this is us on the way. We are now going to talk through every single one of their victims. Then we can talk about how the police actually caught them. Okay.
Okay.
This is where we get to. I have to take a mouthful of coffee before I carry on getting dry.
Let's all do that. Let's all have a mouthful of coffee. Let's hear it for the trauma.
Has everybody got their kittens ready?
Yeah. Also, before we go any further, please make sure if the subscribe button is red that you click that. Subscribe. Make sure you're following Mo, and make sure you click the like button and share. It's all free. Subscribe and like and share, and it's all free. It's all free. 2020, and it's free. So click and share if you can, because that would be awesome. Thank you. And yeah, Mo is really quiet tonight. I don't know what's going on with it.
This might just be, but I'm trying not to wake up my wife. That's what it is as well. If I speak a little bit closer to the microphone, hold on.
The snowballs.
Is that better?
Yeah, literally, I had to mouth fuck that mic. Like, you really need it. It's just such a fucking.
We'll do some mic porn.
Okay? Well, I don't understand I don't mean... why they would make a mic a ball, unless it's like not for talking into it. Why is the back of the mic all open? Like, I can hear everything that's going on in front of you. Like, there's like a.
Yeah, that's probably the fan of my laptop.
Yeah, it's definitely the fan of the laptop. It's so stupid. Like, why would you make a mic and then cut the back out of it when you just want the forward sound? See, I've learned that I don't need to mouth fuck this mic. This mic's like way far away from me. It's like way away now, so that nobody gets the old in their ears. Do you know what I mean?
The old ASMR thing.
Yeah, the old ASMR. Right. Fucking ASMR, man. I swear to fucking God. People were wanting me to do that shit. I can't. Do you know what I hear every time I do ASMR? This is what I hear, right? This is what I hear. In between me talking, it's like...
Yeah.
And I can't listen to it. Like, it's like when the dog laps, or he's lapping. I can't deal with that. It's like a ticking fucking clock,
no,
man.
I agree with you completely. I was watching some... ASMR videos, and there was this guy, and he's got these little clickers, and he's like, going, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? And then he's got castanets,
people love it, man. People love it.
You know, fuck that shit. Just talk. You know, just talk. If you've got a calming voice,
I can't do it.
Talk.
I mean, talking quietly, sure, but some of it, when you get really hardcore, and you've got like the twin mic, and they've got like rubber ears and shit. it's just like, wow. People can talk really quietly.
Yeah.
Like they can talk so
You
quietly,
know,
but I'm just waiting for the lap.
it's weird.
But
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
somebody licking the mic to get that sound effect.
Oh, it's not even that. It's just if their mouth's even remotely dry, right? All I can hear is everything in their mouth sticking together and then unsticking together. It's like a ticking clock, man. It's just one of those ones.
That's me every day with my one saliva gland. You know, it's just like, bleh, blah, blah, blah. Right, are we going to talk about these victims?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, right. So we are now still in 1973, and we have a young lady called Linda Goch. She's 21. She is a seamstress, and she's from Gloucester. She was born in 1953, and she lived in Gloucester with her family. And she attended a very good primary school. And she went later on to a private girls' school in somewhere else in Gloucester. So she was a well-to-do young woman. She commenced work in the co-op in 1969, and then as a seamstress up until she left this earthly plane at the hands of the Wests. On April the 19th, 1973, she left her house, leaving a note saying that she'd gone to a flat. Her parents had told a friend and a local police officer that Linda's disappearance was reported, although it was appreciated by the family that she was not considered to be vulnerable. So she was missing, but the police weren't too concerned because she was from a well-to-do family. She'd left a note and everything was cool. Her remains were found on March the 7th, 1994. So she disappeared in 1973, and she wasn't found again until her remains were dug up in 1994 in the ground floor bathroom of 25 Cromwell Street. Now, just so you know, she wasn't the first person to be found there. She was actually the 8th set of remains to be found, but she was the first victim. It was also the first sexually motivated killing by the Wests that they had actually committed together. This was the first one. This was the first young woman that was killed by the West together with their murder, death, rape, kill, torture thing going on. She was actually a lodger for the West, and she was like sex partners with Rose as well. Her disappearance, right? When she disappeared, her mum came calling at Cromwell Street to find out where her daughter was. Okay, now get ready for weird shit number 1. Okay, Rose was like, no, she's moved away to Weston-super-Mare to find work. Okay, but Rose was standing there wearing this young woman's clothes and slippers in front of her mum, and her mum knew this. That is just weird. Meanwhile, her remains were actually buried in the house underneath the bathroom. Insane, absolutely insane. I mean, here we know that it's murder, death, torture, kill, rape, pillage, and everything like that. We know what they're like because Caroline got away and told the story, but we don't have details of what happened to Linda. You know, we don't, but we just know that her mum turned up, looked at Rose, and I mean, what the fuck? You're wearing my daughter's slippers. You're wearing my daughter's clothes. It's as if it's normal. As if it's normal. It's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. That was victim number 1. Okay. Still in 1973, we then meet a young lady called Lucy Partington. She is 21 years old, and when she met Wes, or when she passed away at the hands of the Wests, and she was a university student. She was from Cheltenham. She was born in St Albans, and she was a third child. And on the night of December 27th, 1973, during the last year of her English literature degree, she was abducted by Rose and Fred at a bus stop on a particular road. The precise date of death may be round about a week or so after she was abducted. Simply because they know that was the last place that she was seen was at that excuse me, at that bus stop. That was the last place she was seen. Okay, and the reason that the police think that she died about a week later was because Fred actually admitted himself into the hospital with a serious cut on his right hand that needed several stitches, and the police think that he may have cut himself while dismembering this woman. So they think that, you know, from the timeline of when she was last seen to when Fred went to the hospital was just a week to 10 days. And yeah, so what happened to her? This begs to think that she could have been abducted and tortured and raped and beaten and abused physically, mentally, etc. for several days in the cellar of the Wests before she was finally killed. And her remains were discovered on the 6th of March 1994, along with the knife that West used to dismember her. It's awful to think that we know what happened to Caroline. Can you imagine that going on for days? And again, it was normal for the Wests to do this. Crazy.
It's really shocking.
Right. It's crazy. But like I said before, it's important that you understand that from the one that got away, what the Wests were actually capable of doing. Okay, and that was before they killed anybody. So they're just up in their game. So they've had this woman for days, and they're just doing those terrible things to her that they did to Caroline, except longer. And you know, wow, it doesn't bear thinking about. Right, we're now hit 1974. This is number 3. Carol Cooper, 15 years old, schoolgirl from Worcester. I can never say that right. Worcester? Anyway, from somewhere. She'd been placed into care after her mum's death in 1966, and so she was a wee bit of a wayward teenager, to say the least. And she was last seen alive by her boyfriend boarding a bus to her grandma's house. She was born in Luton, but later lived in Worcester. At the time of her disappearance, she was actually living in a children's home. And she was given permission to go and visit her grandmother quite regularly to try and get some sort of normality back into her life after her mum died. During the afternoon of November the 10th, she went to visit the cinema in the town with her friends, and then she was last seen getting onto a bus about 9:10. And she was reported missing the same day by her grandmother. Okay, so the local police did extensive inquiries about her, but she was never, ever traced and never, ever found until her remains were recovered in the cellar of 25 Cromwell Street at 7:10 on March the 8th, 1994. So again, that's 21 years that the grandmother, friends, remaining family were being tortured mentally about where this girl was. They had no clue. She was actually the 9th set of remains, the 3rd victim, but the 9th set of remains to be found. She was also the final victim unearthed from that particular cellar. Now, this is where it gets a bit more freaky as well. Her skull was bound with surgical tape, and her dismembered body was bound, limbs were bound with cords and braiding cloth. Okay, so what the fuck were they doing to her? You know, when you find out later on what was going on, okay, with one of the other victims and how that particular body was found, you can see that the Wests progressively up their game with murder, death, kill, torture, rape. Okay, it's unbelievable, unbelievable.
It is.
We now move on to
They're-
1970. Do we need a mouthful of coffee break
Yeah,
just
no,
now?
I'm
I
just
think
saying
I know
that
what we're doing.
that you can see that they're getting just a little bit more into their craft with each individual. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It's
Can we
not good.
lure one back to the house? Yes. Can we lure one back to the house now and trap her there? You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not
Crazy.
just that. If we can't lure them back, can we just abduct them and do untold things to them?
Well,
What do we do when we're finished with them? Oh, we could just bury them in the garden. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, we could do that. Let's kidnap a teenager, torture them, do untold questionable things to
surely
them.
you'd have to have
because
a whack
that's
of
normal.
bodies. You'd have to have like a whack of bodies, then dig up the garden, then bury a whack of them. Otherwise, you'd just be digging up the garden the whole time. Like the whole time.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, oh, better go and dig in our big fucking hole that no one better see me digging. Does anybody ever think about that? Like, if you bury 8 bodies in the garden, surely you're doing like at least 4 at a time. At least. There's got to be some...
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, if you live in the middle of fucking nowhere, this was not the middle of nowhere. This was like cramped terrace houses. So, like, burying a whack of people in the garden, surely you're going to have to bury several at a time. I mean, that's just my theory, because otherwise... I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you're just constantly doing shit in your garden. I don't know.
Well, that's it. That's what Fred did. He was constantly upgrading his house, wasn't he? He was a worker. He was a builder for things like that. He was constantly doing stuff. So this was okay.
I'm way too much of a nosy bastard neighbor. I'm way too nosy. Like, I hear someone out in their garden, I'm out and like, are you burying a body or are you doing your roses? I'm watching you. I'm watching you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure my neighbours were wondering why I was hacking limbs off a tree today as well. Thinking, I wonder if he uses that bandsaw for cutting up bodies.
Yeah, that's it, man. I'm just saying, if you see your neighbour just randomly digging massive holes in the garden and doing up his garden, and apparently that involves 6-foot holes every time he does it, you might want to go and have a wee investigation. Call the popo.
Oh yes.
You know what I'm saying? But right, Mo, you continue.
Right. We're now hitting 1975. Okay. We now have a lady called Juanita Mott. She was 19 and she was from Gloucestershire, which is where this all takes place in Gloucester anyway. And she was born in 1957 and attended a reasonably good school as well, Winifred Cullis Girls' School, at quite a nice part of Gloucester. She then had a few jobs, including working for Birdseye and Walls. Now, in the 70s, these would have been prime jobs in the factories or in the offices. These would be the places to work for, because Captain Birdseye was around back then, and he was all that, and everybody wanted to work for these big names. On Friday, April the 11th, 1975, Juanita left the address in Newent, where she was living at the time, and she was believed to be travelling into Gloucestershire. She had made arrangements to return to the address the following day, but she did not come back. Juanita's disappearance, it wasn't reported to the police. However, her family did contact the Missing Persons Bureau and the media as well. Her details were included in the Missing Persons articles, magazines, and newspapers where everything was done. That was taken straight out of a report. I thought it was important that this wasn't reported as much to the police, but there's all these other civilian type things that people can report missing people to. Her remains were found on Sunday, the 6th of March, 1994, in the cellar area of 25 Cromwell Street. That was the 7th set of remains to be recovered. She's thought to have been abducted by the Wests as she hitchhiked along a road. and subsequent confessions to the police, Fred would refer to Juanita as the girl from Youant. So he had names for them all. The remains were found. There was no extreme, not any more extreme sort of evidence of torture than what we've already experienced. It was like now standard West protocol, dismemberment, bits of bones cut off and kept, sort of thing. We move now on to 1975. A young girl called Shirley Hubbard. She was 15 and she's from Worcester as well. She was a foster child and she was abducted from a bus stop as well as she travelled home from a date. She'd been attending a work experience in Worcester and was last seen by her boyfriend and basically promised to hook up with him the next day. Yes, here we go. Right. When her dismembered remains were found in the cellar as well, this particular part of the cellar was actually known as the Marilyn Monroe area of the house. I have no idea why, in the slightest, why it was called the Marilyn Monroe part. Doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe that's where they role played. I don't know. Anyway, her head had been completely covered in tape, totally wrapped in tape. Okay, now you might think that would be a good way to keep the thing. However, there was a 1/8 of an inch diameter rubber tubing inserted 3 inches into her nasal cavity to enable her to breathe. So she was taped up with tubes stuck up her nose for her to breathe while she was gimped big time to the West.
That's fucked.
And when they dismembered her, they just left the tape on.
I'm never going to look at fucking tape again. Do you know what I mean? It's another thing that's just been tainted by the fuckery of the world. Goddamn roll of tape.
Yeah. Duct tape fixes everything and fucks everything as well.
A couple of bendy straws and a roll of tape. I mean, damn.
Well, you've got to be careful. They have to be metal straws now. Remember that. We can't use plastic ones anymore.
Turtles.
Gotta save the turtles, man.
Save those turtles. But yeah, that's crazy. That is straight up crazy.
Yep. Yeah. And her remains were found as well in 1994 when they did the searches on the houses and everything. And she was the 5th set of remains to be recovered from the house in Garden. This again, this is like we're into seasoned victims now. The West they don't just have their way of doing things. They're getting good at it and they're up in their game again. It's like, why did they tape this girl the way they did? Was she making too much noise? Did they want to try something different? They just wanted to have like a body to play with and didn't want to look at her. Okay, were they just fucking freaks and thought this might be fun? I say all of the above. There's not one thing in my opinion after reading about them that doesn't surprise me with their behaviors towards other human beings and what they did to people.
Yeah, I agree.
It's unbelievable. Now we have a break for about a year because that was 1975. We now move on to 1977. Obviously, the binding of a head and having straws up the nose and however long this poor girl was tortured for, was enough to keep them high on that sexual high for a good while, and perhaps maybe, Rose was like having sex with multiple clients and, taking what she'd learned for that and taking it out on them, but not having to kill anybody yet from it all. But in 1977, there's a young lady from Switzerland called Teresa, let me just get her second name, Siegenthaler. Teresa Siegenthaler. That's a great name. And she was born in Switzerland in 1952, but she lived in the Bern area, which is just another part of Switzerland. She left school at 16 and then basically continued her education and studied secretarial studies. She came to England in 1972 sort of late 1972, early 1973 to continue her studies and became a sociology student at the Woolwich College of Further Education in London. And she found accommodation in Lewisham. I can't remember where Lewisham is. I don't know where that is relevant to Gloucester. She worked in a shop at the Swiss Centre in Leicester Square at the weekends. So she had quite a normal, adventurous, foreign exchange student type lifestyle going on here. On April 15th, 1974, she left her accommodation the week before Easter, intending to travel to Holyhead. She never reached her destination at all. She was due back in England the week after Easter break and failed to come back. Her disappearance was reported to the police on April 26, 1974, and where there was an investigation by the Metropolitan Police, covering a few years of her disappearance, but nothing was found. She was abducted by the Wests as she hitchhiked from South London to Holyhead. Fred mistook her Swiss accent to be a Dutch one and always referred to her as the Dutch girl, or Tulip. She was reported missing, as we said, and her family in Switzerland kind of pushed for the investigations, but she was never found. It was later found, though, that Fred had concealed her remains by building a false chimney breast over her grave. And these remains were found on the 5th of March in the basement of Cromwell Street, and she was the 4th set of remains to be dug up. It's important to understand that the bodies were not found in the order that they were killed, obviously. I'm talking about the victims in the order that they were killed.
Of course, yeah.
But the police are looking in one particular place in the house, then another particular place in the house, and another particular place. I've got the full report of the police as well, done time by hour on the weeks that they were doing, to talk about as well. And it's crazy, absolutely crazy. There wasn't many details with regards to if this body was cut up and dismembered or anything. We can only assume that her fate was a terrible one at the hands of Rose and Fred, as sadly, with anybody that was abducted by them. I mean, you've got two different types of victims here, though. Okay, it sounds stupid, this, right? Okay, but you've got we need to go and abduct somebody and torture, rape, murder, kill, do horrible things to them, or we have our lodgers that we will continually to do terrible things to, but we're not going to kill them straight away because they're kind of known in the neighbourhood. But that's kind of where it was with them. They've got lodgers to have sex with and abuse on tap.
Yep.
Some of them go, some of them stay, some of them are transient and just have sex with them.
Do you think there may have been a gap in the lodgers, and that's when somebody got put in the basement?
That could well be, or basically maybe Rose got jealous of Fred having sex with lodgers and wanted to take it out on somebody. There's that as well.
Yeah, there is. Spicy fuckers.
Because she is totally involved with this and loving this. I mean, she was known.
Of course.
In the reports I've written, I don't think I've got the reports here, but she was known to up her game all the time. Like, she would want to get larger sex toys and use them on the girls that were there, even some of the guys as well. I mean, easy peasy, Rose. You're not getting to touch me with any of those things. I don't know where those things have been, at the best of times. But I swear to God, I mean, she was the sexual deviant in a fun term. Oh, so and so is a sexual deviant, but this is deviant in capital letters, surrounded by warning signs. Okay, if you don't play Rose's game, she will kill you and eat you. Okay, then bury you in the garden. It's just insane, absolutely insane. So we're now moving on to 1977. A young woman called Alison Chambers. and she was 17 when she met her fate at the hands of the West, and she was originally from Swansea in Wales. At the age of 16, she moved to Gloucester and worked for a firm of solicitors in what they called a YTS scheme, a youth training scheme. This was like the Labour Party sort of, we're going to change apprenticeships to soft skills and
YTS.
and things.
Yeah, there's been
Yes,
many.
remember the YTS schemes? You know what? They were brilliant, to be perfectly honest. They were a great thing in the 70s. Excuse me, in the 80s as well.
Not the Young Tall Cross Squad. Not the Young Tall Cross Squad.
Yeah.
No.
It's
all good.
Again, it's crazy to think what happened to this little girl. She was a foster kid as well, and at the age of 14, she'd repeatedly, ran away from the foster homes and stuff, and excuse me, where are we? Okay, she basically became friends with the Wests during that year, and Fred later claimed to a solicitor that she had died of a result of Rose becoming, this is Fred's word, too bloody vicious with her. Now, if you have ever had the opportunity to listen to the Fred West tapes on YouTube, you could imagine him actually saying this with his sort of Gloucester type accent going on, which is sort of like, well, it's this poor girl, she just died at the hands of Rose, for she was becoming too bloody vicious with her. It would just be totally matter of fact, as if it was, again, a normal sort of thing. Rose was just terribly vicious, and that's what happened. Her disappearance was reported to the Missing Persons Bureau, like with one of the other ones as well, and then to the police. But the police treated it as somebody that was absconded from care. Didn't treat it as a potential, death or anything. And her remains were found in February 1994, and her remains were the second set of remains to be found. Now, bear in mind, she was only 16 when this happened, and her body was found dismembered. That's, arms, legs, everything cut off, missing several bones, and had a leather belt loop beneath her jaw, tied up over the top of her head. So that is kind of like round underneath the jaw, if you imagine, underneath the jaw, round, pulled tight, so she can't open her mouth at all. They're experimenting more. Not satisfied with the tape, they now want to make sure the victim keeps her mouth shut, and wants to view the terror in their eyes. It's we're sitting in 1978 for the next victim here. We started this they started killing people in 1973. This has only been 5 years.
I know. It's unreal, man.
It's insane. It's just insane. They're getting away with it. How are they getting away with it? It blows my mind. It blows my mind. So 1978, a young woman called Shirley Robinson, 18, okay, and she was a lodger, and she was also Fred's lover. Wait for this. She was also heavily pregnant with Fred's child. Wow.
Jesus.
She is believed to have been seen last in April 1978, and she was 8 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance, with Fred's child, and her baby boy was due to be born in June that year, and she was not reported at all to the police as a missing person, as you can imagine, because she was a lodger there, and they obviously wouldn't want to bring attention any more than it actually was to the house. Her remains were found in February 1994 in the rear of the garden of Cromwell Street under the patio. She was one of the patio girls. There is no sexual motive that existed for this murder at all, The prosecution team contended that in Rose's trial that the young woman had been murdered because Rose was jealous of her pregnancy and kind of threatened to unbalance the stability of the West's relationship. It was also said that Fred had originally planned to sell the baby to a childless couple and had photographs taken with Robinson for this purpose. Wow, hold on, I just need to move my cushion because my butt is getting numb on this chair.
Oh, yeah, me too. I know. Oh man.
Oh dear God.
The struggle is real. The struggle is real.
You know, it's mental. So I mean, 1978, they're moving on to let's kill a pregnant woman, you know, or if they have the baby, let's just go into and sell the baby. We'll just sell a baby. That's what people do, isn't it? We sell children now. We're the Wests. We will sell you a child. We've got a baby factory in the lodgers' rooms up the stairs, where we go and
just
fertilize our lodgers and sell their children. Amazing, astounding. Ah, yes. Well, big break now. That was in 1978. We now jump almost 10 years. Obviously, killing a pregnant woman was enough for them. Or maybe they killed people and they got rid of the body somewhere else. But anybody that was killed in the next 9 years by the Wests never came to light in any of the trials or any of the evidence. There's nothing at all. We're hitting 1987, and this is Heather West. She was the first child of Rosemary Pauline West. Yes. Heather was last seen on June the 19th, 1987, but was never reported missing to the police. She was 16 years old. She was likely to have been murdered by Fred and Rose because she was a threat to the stability of the house again. She'd been talking to her friends at school about the physical and sexual abuse that happened to her brothers and sisters and her at Cromwell Street. Fred later stated, wait for this, right, stated in his police interviews that he'd not intended to kill his daughter. But the evidence showed otherwise. There was carpet fibres found on and 2 lengths of rope with her remains, suggesting that she'd been restrained and subjugated to a torturous sexual abuse and rape prior to her murder. This is their own daughter at 16 years old. Just let that sink in for a second. They've already killed one daughter away in the past, but now they've got a grown-up daughter, you know, ready to do crazy things with. Somebody who's got a bit of a strong enough mind to know what's going on is drastically wrong. This tells me, right, that the Wests knew that they were doing things wrong. They knew that this was wrong, what they were doing, because if it was totally normalized and they didn't feel threatened, why the fuck would they kill their own daughter? You know, they tried to normalize her into it, but no, this isn't normal. This isn't right. And then they kill her. Her body was dismembered, like cut up big time, with a very large serrated knife, and they found the knife in the garden as well. Now this is the awful thing. It gets worse and more freaky with this. They buried her in the garden, but Fred got his son to dig the hole under the pretense of basically making a pond in the garden. In 1994, the police investigation into her disappearance, they discovered the discovery of her body and the arrest of her parents. It was because of her that the Wests were actually arrested. And her remains were found under the patio at the rear of the garden as well. She was one of the other patio girls. as well. So that takes us
It's
up
unreal.
to the bit that was the last one. That was the last victim. The last victim at Cromwell Street, anyway. And there was also, you've got to remember, the daughter at their house previous to that, Fred's other victims, and who knows what else in the years in between. Because I don't believe for 1 second that if they were killing one person a year, that they could go almost 10 years without killing somebody. I just refuse
Yeah.
to believe
Well,
that. These people were.
it would make sense that there was a bit of an addiction there, addiction to whether it's the killing or the brutality,
Or
the
maybe Rose got a
torture.
bit motherly and decided that she just wanted to abuse her children a little bit more, and stuff like that. Maybe that's what was happening.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know, but
even the ones that survived were heavily abused out of our kids.
it's the whole thing is the whole thing. It just it beggars belief. So these people, they've got away with this for 20 years, and like I say, you've got this massive, ridiculous pattern of behavior for the serial killer side of it. Then you've got this crazy normalization of sexual torture to their children in the house. Okay, then you've got the over sexualized father, the over sexualized mother.
Sure.
Okay, the mother that is so over sexualized within everything that's going on because she's a prostitute, and the father that's getting off on this looking through peepholes. You've got Rose that's been made pregnant by her clients, and some of their kids are of mixed race, and they're obviously not Fred's kids.
Yeah.
We've got all this going on, and it's nobody's batting an eyelid at all in the neighborhood. Like yourself, Ron, like yourself, if somebody was digging a hole in the garden, I would actually be asking them, are you hiding a body in there like this? And then if they said yes, I would look around and say, just as a joke, do you need some help? Just to
I mean,
test them.
yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah,
I've got some lime in the shed. We could
it's
throw some lime in
crazy.
it to stop it smelling,
It's
But
crazy when you think
it's
about how they got away with burying people in the garden. Like that's,
mm,
I mean, they did, so they've obviously thought it through, but just unreal. Especially when you see just
it's
the
I
sheer
think
amount. Once the bodies start piling up, it's mad.
this is it. This is the whole thing, right? Now, I've got in front of me just now the police report hour by hour of what happened next.
Okay.
Okay, over the weeks and months that they did. I'm not gonna go through every single part of it. I'm gonna go through. I've got every part in front of me, but I want to go through what happened, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and how they ended up in court and what happens. Because you could go through. We've been talking for just over an hour just now, right? But there's not enough material here for a whole other episode about the police investigation. It would be
Okay.
quite boring in comparison to everything. But it's important that you understand what the police had to do to get through all this, and also that the attitude of the Wests when they were um, being interviewed, and the absolute disbelief of Rose as it goes through everything. So
Well, I'm gonna.
the Gloucester police, sorry.
Yeah, I mean the lifestyle in the house as well. You touched on it a little bit when you said that Fred would listen into Rose's clients and things like that when she was a prostitute and all the rest. And
Mm-hmm,
Fred encouraged this, but Rose was never allowed to look like she enjoyed it. She was never allowed to look like she was having a good time or sound like she was having a good time, or there would be serious shit coming her way.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you know,
It was the same with Fred, though. The same with Fred. He wasn't allowed to show. Rose used to get exceptionally jealous if he did anything. I mean, look, they killed that girl that Fred got
sure,
pregnant
sure,
because Rose was definitely understood that this was going to risk the status quo of her being the matriarch in
sure.
the house. This is like medieval stuff.
It is, yeah.
Whereas another woman comes in, a younger woman, and has a child, and like in a royal family, and then all of a sudden the older woman gets killed, or the younger woman and her son or child gets killed because
Yeah.
of the way that the balance is disrupted. It's just insane. It's just insane about the whole thing. But no, you're right. Okay, without a doubt, either of them, it was pleasure together the torture, murder, death,
Yeah,
rape,
absolutely. That
crazy stuff.
100%. It's just an interesting dynamic when you see the the mindset towards Rose's prostitution, and you know how he would react if he thought she enjoyed it. It's just an interesting thing when you think about what would make a psychopath like that snap. Do you know what I mean? It's not someone pumping his missus, it's her enjoying getting pumped.
Do you know what's crazy though as well is Fred actually really loved Rose.
Yeah.
When he was in love with this woman.
Yeah.
And I think it was beyond the pale of what they actually did.
It was
actually loved her.
It was that perfect storm. We've seen it when you were talking about the Moors murders. That was a perfect storm. You know, and it must just be like the however many year cycle. Do you know what I mean? When these two perfect cataclysmic individuals meet and become a couple, and we have one of these massive events, because you don't see waves.
It doesn't.
You don't see waves of it. It's crazy. It is crazy.
It makes you wonder how many couples are like this. I think there's probably less couples like this out there compared to other people, but there's a very interesting turn of events in 2000, I think it's 2016, which we'll come to right at the very end, which touches with another serial killer and the Wests as well, because obviously Rose is still around right now. But it's wild. It's what I'm going to finish up on, which is quite funny. But let's talk about what happened with the police and things. So the police explain how their inquiry began. So in 1992, the 5 children of Fred and Rose were taken away under emergency protection orders following child protection concerns. You've got to remember that the kids had been in and out of hospital 31 times in these years, 31 times. And the abuse that these guys had received was paramount. But the Rosemary was clever enough never to do it on parts of their bodies that could be seen, their face, their arms, their legs. It was all places that could be well hidden. The kids were removed by the police and social services and were temporarily located in social housing with specialist unit, so they could also be interviewed. It was a place called Cowley Manor. Now I am sure Cowley Manor was a place in the 70s, 80s, or even maybe in the 90s that was rife with child abuse things in their own way. I'm sure that rings a bell. I didn't look it up or anything, but it might be worthwhile having a look at that, because there was so much of that going on at that time as well. The kids were interviewed by the police and social services, and some of the interviews, one of the interviews in particular took almost 2 days to complete, and this is where some of the kids started saying and talking about their sister Heather being buried under the patio as a joke. Okay, because later you find out in different interviews with the kids that they used to have a nursery rhyme, like the made up nursery rhyme that they used to sort of like talk about their sister being. They weren't supposed to know that their sister was underneath there, but Fred used to say it as a joke to them as well. He used to turn and say, you know, if you're not good, you're going to end up under the patio with Heather. What a way
grim
to threaten your kids.
Yeah, that is grim.
Oh man, totally. Now it wasn't just one of the kids that said this. It was quite a few of them, but it was at different times, and they didn't take it. The social services didn't take it seriously to begin with. And the police were trying to find Heather. They were trying to find her to interview her as well, because they wanted to see if they could provide any more additional information about the child protection investigation. But obviously they couldn't find her at all. And there was no further comment was made to the police or the social services staff regarding Heather and the patio until the summer of 1993. Until 1993, it was quiet on the Heather front while the kids were being interviewed and looked after by social services. They started again to pick up on the comments made by the kids about the patio being laid at the same time that Heather left home, and about the family joke of Heather being under the patio. And then the comments were being made, only occasionally, and like I say, it was some of the kids were like, there was a lot of emphasis by some of the kids on it, and some of the kids were quite flippant about it. But again, the social services started to, some of the social service staff were thinking, no, that can't be right. And then some of the other ones started to think, wait, no, we better start thinking about this. But it was in the minority when people discussed it. They still didn't take it seriously enough yet. So they still hadn't been caught. The Wests were still free to abuse their lodgers, etc. They were still doing the do. August 1993, comments are continuing to be made about Heather under the patio, and now the social services became sufficiently concerned that the police should be informed about this. The calls were made, and to the legal team within the council, who then basically informed the police. The police began to start to make inquiries. They couldn't find Heather. There was no formal complaint or allegation made, but the inquiries were quite substantial. Where is Heather? So they didn't have anything to go on. There was no official complaint made, but because of the nature of what the kids had said and the fact that they needed to maybe find out more information about child abuse in the West House from Heather, they started to take this a bit more seriously. Right. Excuse me, I'm getting dry mouth again here.
That's all right.
Right, so 1994, they've exhausted every single inquiry to try and find Heather, and it was decided that they should start taking actual witness statements from social workers closely connected with the West children, and specifically relating to this family joke. They were now beginning to gather evidence of concern with regards to Heather being dead. Still not arrested the Wests, and we're now in 1994. So the evidence contained in the statements, with the result of other police inquiries successful, made an application to the Gloucester Magistrates Court for a search warrant under Section 8 of the Police Criminal Evidence Act 1984. So they had enough concern to say, we need to go in and look for evidence to see if Heather is underneath the patio. We need to go in and actually have a look at this because we are concerned. And the police have powers to do that. They can request to the courts, we have enough concern to go and look for this. We need to go and look for something here. We don't know what we're looking for, but we know that we're going to specifically look in this area, and that's enough. And as long as they're sort of like not generalizing, like we need to search the entire house, we need to do things like that, because then that's when it becomes a bit ambiguous, right? We know that it would not be ambiguous because of the story that we've just told.
Yeah.
But in the legal scheme of things, they have to say, we're going to look in this area, and that's it. So they did. Now, interestingly enough, way back in the time of Fred being married to his first wife, the Scottish woman.
Yeah.
If you remember back then, the Scottish woman stole a whole bunch of clothes and property belonging to Fred and his girlfriend at the time. And she got arrested for it, but she fled to Scotland, and she was escorted back down to the courts by a police WPC officer called Hazel Savage.
Okay.
And on that journey back down in the train or the car or whatever, Fred's ex-wife basically talked about Fred being this absolute crazy man, the sexual aggression, the rapes, the rapes of her friends, and this whole sexual deviant, with alarm bells, deviant lifestyle going on. turns out that the WPC is now a detective constable called Hazel Savage, and she was one of the lead detectives on this and remembered what this woman had said to her about Fred and connected the behaviours. So she pressed for it and pressed for it to basically keep going. Now, unfortunately, a little bit of background from Hazel Savage. She tried to sell her story to the papers for £1 million and was basically told that this was the wrong thing to do. You know, maybe after she retired, she could write a book. But, you know, while she's still a police officer, it's not the best thing to be saying that she's going to be going to do that. This was after the court case and everything like that. Just a little bit of background on her. So she kind of, you know, during the time, great credibility. After the time, kind of loses a bit of her credibility as a result of that, which is a shame. So we're now on, they've now obtained a warrant. It's now the 23rd of February. This is when the date that the warrant was actually issued. So they go to search on the 24th of February at 1:25. There's a whole bunch of police officers, 15 police officers and a couple of senior people go down to Cromwell Street, where Rose is at the time. And she was told that her rear garden was going to be searched in connection with the disappearance of her daughter. At 1:40, Fred left his work and had not returned to Cromwell Street by 5:30 that day when the detectives had left the house. So he stayed away. So did Rose phone him maybe to say, look, the cops are here?
Yeah, probably.
Just now? I would say so. However, Fred made his own way to Gloucester Police Station and was interviewed on a voluntary basis by DC Savage, by Hazel Savage, regarding the disappearance of Heather. In the interview, he stated that Heather had recently moved to Birmingham. Okay. The same day, Rose was interviewed at the house using a portable tape recorder in her sitting room by two other detectives, and that interview was it started at 5:08 and finished at 20:09. So you're talking 45 minutes it took for Rose to do her statement, whereas Fred's one took hours basically. You like to tell a story, and like I say, if you go and find the Fred West tapes, you will hear this Walter Mitty attitude that he has and how he likes to tell a story and a half. Let's skip past a lot of the nonsense about going in and out of the houses. Rose was a bit uncooperative. She was actually asked for her mother's. One of the detectives wanted to know where Rose's mum was, and Rose didn't want to do it. They wanted to ask Rose's mum questions as well about it. So you can imagine, with Rose's upbringing and her abusive father and her abusive mother, it wasn't going to be particularly wonderful for Rose to show that she comes from that lifestyle and background anyway. That would have just sent alarm bells ringing even more about the whole thing.
Just keep going. I'm just checking something on the stream.
Right, no sweat, brother, no sweat. Fred then took his wife. The police came round talking about the mother, and Fred took his wife away from the lounge, leaving the police in there, and basically said, can we go to the police station, to the police afterwards, like taking his wife away, just taking Rose away to keep her safe. The officers left with Fred and went down to the police station. This is when Fred admitted that Heather was in the garden and stated that the police were actually looking in the wrong place. So Detective Savage arrested Fred for the murder of his daughter upon this confession at that particular point, and Fred was detained. Subsequently, the search went on, and Rose denied the murder of her daughter, even though she didn't know at this time that Fred had actually admitted it or anything. She still denied the murder of her daughter and continued to deny any responsibility for it right the way through the interview process and even after she was arrested. Fred was interviewed repeatedly for the murder of his daughter. He admitted to killing his daughter and gave some explanation about the circumstances. When you hear the tapes again, all right, the explanation that he gives later on, he actually dobs Rose into it and says, you know, I came back from jail, and Rose said that you know that she'd killed us. So this was the younger daughter. Rose said that she'd killed like my daughter, and I was like, oh Rose, why did you do that? And it was just like, again, that normalization type thing.
Yeah, the
It was
passiveness.
insane. But when you hear him speak about Heather as well, you know, and the explanation that he gives, it's just so far-fetched, it's unbelievable. Let's see the next part here. So they took Fred back to the back garden to point to the area where they would have to dig up to find Heather's remains, and eventually they find a femur, a big leg bone, and then that gets sent off, and yes, it's found to be the bones of a young woman, but then they also find another set of bones in the same place. So it's like they were just looking for one person, but now they have two. So at this particular point, Rose gets taken away as well, and they apply to the courts to hold Rose. She's not been arrested properly yet, but she's just been detained and questioned. And because she's not been formally charged, they have to go through the courts for legal purposes to detain her a bit longer without charging her, because they don't want to charge her just yet. She's interviewed repeatedly as well regarding the murder of her daughter, second interviews, third interviews, going on and on and on. Meanwhile, there is more digging going on at Cromwell Street. The bodies are beginning to pile up, where it just keeps going on and on. And, you know, we could go into the details of, like I say, I've got a breakdown by the hour right in front of me, the actual police report, okay? But it doesn't make interesting reading.
No, I get what you
I'm
mean.
just highlighting the parts that are there for it.
Legal documents are always a fun read.
Oh God, it's like I was going. I mean, I've read it twice now, and it's just so I could go and find the relevant parts for it all. Right. So, where did we get to? Let's find the date. We're now sitting at Monday, the 25th of April, 1994. Rose was released that evening, and was taken to Cromwell Street to her family. Okay. Now this is April. Is it April 1994? Yeah. Okay. And then at 10 o'clock the next day, Fred appeared in Gloucester Magistrates Court to be charged with the murder of his daughter, Heather West. This is on the back of her body being found, on the back of his confession, and on the back that Rose still denied anything to do with it. So he was the only one that is being charged at this time, and he was remanded in police custody for a further 3 days. You know, if you're not a threat, you're going to probably be released to go and see your lawyers and things like that in those days. It's crazy. Personally, I wouldn't have released him, but that's hindsight. Then started talking about the other bodies and the bodies that were found. He started talking about how he killed Shirley Robinson, and how he did it without Rose's knowledge. Bullshit. We know from later on that that's nonsense. He is trying to.
Let's play a little bit of those tapes. I think.
Have you got some of them? Have you found them?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
Is it a black and white picture?
Rosen. I don't know. Oh yeah, I don't know. Let's just click him and find out.
Yeah.
What'll it be?
I won't be able to
I'm Howard Soames. 25 years ago.
Oh no, hang on. Oh God. Do you remember what they were actually called? Was it just Fred West tape?
look it up. I might still have it on my YouTube.
Oh well, yeah, no, I found it, man. I mean, Jesus, it couldn't be any simpler. If it was, I mean, I don't know how I screwed that up. Massive black and white picture, just called Fred. The Fred. Wow.
You got it. Are you still there?
Yeah, we're still here. I've got the tapes playing. You just need to mute yourself a bit.
Right, this way.
Right, let's.
I had a chat with the Salvation Army bloke in here the other day. Went over into the middle of the fire. So that was the end of that. Rena come fucking straight into me, man. You know, I mean, that was something else. This feeling of bodies coming out of the ground, and I didn't know I had that. But with Rena, I mean, I tried to hold it until I could get back to the cells. But I mean, halfway back, I just had to let go. I mean, I got such an experience when Rena came up into me at that field. I mean, that was something else. I mean, I never gone through anything like that in my life. And she had this smile on her face, and Anne was in my mind there with her, you know, mixed up with her. Like, I mean, and as Rena went away, Anne sort of stayed there. And for the life of me, I couldn't think who the heck Anne was. I mean, I said, after, I said, I've got the name Anne in my mind all the time. The clue it is. Because I, you know. And then, of course, that night it all came back to me. I mean, I went and sat on the step, lit a fag, and I mean, I felt terrible. Yeah, really felt ill. And I went to put my hand in my hand like that. And suddenly Anne come in between it. And I more or less pushed her into my head. And I knew it was, you know, straight away. So I got in touch with everybody to get everybody there, you know, because I found her.
Absolutely, you can just hear the passiveness 100%. Like it's just like he's talking about types of fucking chicken, like Asda. Do you know what I mean?
The thing is, what he's talking about there with regards to Rena, right?
Yeah.
This is all about him seeing spirits of his victims as well. He talks in great detail about seeing dead people as well with regards to this, and he's totally
sane, totally sane individual.
It's wild.
It is wild.
It really is wild. But it's his whole attitude, his whole demeanor. When I went through this whole research process of looking at this in any great detail, and then I came across that particular thing, I listened to those tapes. I couldn't believe this guy. He was just telling a story as if he was entertaining people.
Yeah.
You know, as if this was like down the pub with the boys. You know, yeah, but guess what happened last night? Picked up this girl, knocked her unconscious in the back of the car, and fucked her silly with my wife. You should have seen what my wife did to her. Wow, what a great girl she is. You know? It's insane to think that. It's insane. I mean, by the time they finally dig up the last body and things, right? They've interviewed Fred for pretty much everybody. They've interviewed Fred for his background. They've been interviewing Rose as they go on. She is still denying anything to do with it, blaming Fred for it all. They appeared in court together. Fred's not seen his wife for months, okay, by this time. And they appeared in court together, and he's so looking forward to seeing Rose. He loves Rose so much, but she just totally shuns him. And it's like, no, you know, not having anything to do with you at all. It's absolutely insane. I'm just going down my notes to get to the part where it becomes a bit spicy again. Fred's taken to various different places, not just in his garden, but also taken to where he, when he killed and murdered his first wife, was taken to where her grave was to dig her up as well. And basically the whole place. I remember when this was happening on the telly. I mean, I've seen pictures that today I saw pictures of the police coming out with boxes, black boxes, which obviously has the bodily remains in, with crowds of people outside the house, as if it's some sort of spectator sport. You know, it's crazy. I mean, Fred was taken everywhere to point out where he'd pick people up. You know, everything. He was actually taken around pretty much everywhere, and eventually he was charged with the murders of all these women, which is a very positive thing. And we'll just get past all that nonsense. Here we go. Right. So you were talking about all the holes in the ground and things, how people wouldn't notice things like that. When they dug all these holes up, they actually filled them all back in again with concrete. So it was basically to sort of like sanitize the ground.
Oh,
they just
that whole place was concreted, man. Like they just demolished, lifted it all out, and then just skimmed that whole freaking area and turned it into like a, I believe it's just a path now. There's just
it's just a path.
It's just a pathway now. So fucking crazy.
But it's still it's a place now for macabre tours. You know, people.
Oh hell yeah. Of course.
Just going down to have that completely crazy tour part of
oh man, there's a website on Google that just sells murderers' artwork and memorabilia who are currently in jail. So, you know, dude, it's crazy. And there's some heavy hitters in the killer world with desirable artwork. It's nuts. It's nuts.
That's crazy.
But there's always that market for it all. But the West, I mean, damn, they're so prolific over here, and to be honest, it's not until you do your own investigation, because the news really just salted, like just you know, brushed over it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And all these people that went missing, there was Fred didn't see justice. Justice was not served upon him. He hung himself. He took his own life.
But do you think that was more due to Rose and how Rose was treating him rather than his own guilt?
Yes. Yeah, because he was wanting to protect Rose as well. And basically, in a note, he actually said words to that effect. So Sunday, the 1st of January 1995, Fred West is found dead in his cell at Her Majesty's Prison, Winson Green in Birmingham. And he was able to hang himself. There was an investigation in because he wasn't on suicide watch at all. And a suicide kit was left. And this is what they call in prison a suicide kit. He had like items which he could have easily taken his own life. The sheets on his bed.
Sure.
Okay. He had razor blades, and he also had a cotton reel as well. Okay, so he had all these things in his cell that he could have like slashed himself with, hung himself with, etc., etc. And the thing was, after he died, it made it very, very easy for Rose to plead not guilty. Okay.
Yeah.
Not guilty. But wait for this. On Friday the 13th of January 1995, Rose West was charged with the murder of Charmaine West. This was the stepdaughter, way back, the one that she hid in the coal shed.
Yeah.
Because the police investigated and knew that Fred had not murdered her because he was in jail at the time.
Yeah,
so from that point on, it was all downhill for Rose.
Do you think Rose was just playing the long game and just seen Fred as a ticket and a fall guy?
Potentially. I don't know. I think that she was damaged goods anyway. Remember that her mum received electroshock therapy while she was a fetus.
No, yeah, absolutely. I just think she's so beyond regular person smart. That's what I feel about Rose. I think that she comes across as just incapable when you see pictures of her and all the rest of it. But when you delve into who she really was, I mean, I genuinely think there's a theory that you could easily play out that this was her meal ticket and her patsy, basically. Possibly. I mean,
Absolutely. I think that was after the police got involved, though.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Without a doubt, it was definitely after the police were involved. I don't think there was remorse there, but I think she was scared. You know, I think she was a bit scared. Remorse, no. Fear, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I think that both of them thought what they were thinking, what they were doing was wrong. I don't think Fred did, and I think to a certain extent as well. I don't think Rose thought she was doing anything wrong, but I think at the end, when she was arrested and she's sort of still pleading not guilty, she's thinking that she can get away with it, but not until the Charmaine case comes up, and
sure.
That's it after that. But you know, they had a terrible time going on with it, and on the 22nd of November 1995, remember that Fred is dead. The jury's verdict was unanimous, and she was found guilty of 10 murders. And the judge was Mr. Justice Mantle, and sentenced her to life imprisonment, saying, and his quote was, you know how judges always say something quite poignant when they sentence somebody, "If attention is paid to what I think, you will never be released." This is what he said to Rosemary West, which is something crazy. Now, interesting enough, the Lord Chief Justice later decided that she should spend at least 25 years in prison, but in July 1997, the Home Secretary Jack Straw subjugated Rosemary West to what's known as a whole life tariff. The only other person in modern British times to ever have a whole life tariff is Myra Hindley. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, that was then. Okay? Now, this is the spicy ending to it all. Okay? Rose was still appealing to everything. She was appealing, and she was being questioned for up to the murder of 30 people. Okay? There was nothing ever found for it. That's spicy part number one. She still was definitely saying, "I am not guilty. I am not guilty of anything at all." And she still throws the odd appeal in from time to time. But let us now jump to July last year. Okay, I'm going to read this straight from the papers. Child killer Rose West has been moved to another prison after a fellow serial killer called, wait for this, if you ever heard of this name before, Joanna Dennehy, threatened to murder her, it was claimed. Dennehy has just been transferred to the top security prison where West, who is now 65, has been detained. She's been detained there for over a decade. Management at the jail feared for Rosemary West's safety after Dennehy said, "I'll kill that bitch." Now, Dennehy, who is aged 35, is the only other woman in Great Britain who is also serving a whole life term like Myra and Rose. So this other British serial killer, another woman, okay, now when I looked into her, we could do a show about her.
Do you know, it's funny because I know this case, and she is next week, man. Next week, Joanna Dennehy, for sure.
Absolutely,
for sure. I mean,
we're not going to talk about her anymore then.
Okay? Damn.
But see that knife there on the picture?
Oh yeah. Oh, I know.
There.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
Look
next week.
She gives me the chills, man. Just looking at her.
I just want to say to everybody who's watching right now, make sure you stay to the end. I've got a very special announcement because I'm going straight into another stream on YouTube after this one, completely out of the blue. But there's something that we need to talk about. So once we're done here, before we go to Mixer and do some pixel killing, there's about an extra hour and a bit that I'm going to be doing on a whole other topic, but we'll get to that at the end. But it is an insane case, and next week, Mo, we will look into.
I'm going to start the stuff on Joanna.
The process, yeah, absolutely. because
she's wild.
I think it's interesting as well. I've seen a female solo serial killer. I think that's the first one we've got brought to the table, to be honest. If I'm being honest with you,
it's amazing how it's connected to the West as well. You know, it just
Yeah.
leads on quite nicely to talk about her, because
Yeah.
she's friggin' nuts as well. You know, she's absolutely insane. But that's it. That's the case. Fred is dead. Rose is still around. Rose is like, what, 67 now or 66 now or something like that. She's still believes that she's innocent, but she didn't want to leave the prison that she got moved from because it had been her home. And the papers, when I looked at the papers reporting, it says she's an old lady now and she doesn't want to leave her home. And I'm like, fuck off. You know, put her in a van and just drive it into the ocean, please, will you?
No, the ocean doesn't deserve that. Just take the van and take
This
it
is
to
true.
like one of those things that you see in the mafia movies that just turn her into like a cube of metal.
Oh yeah, or you know those rotating teeth of death.
Yeah, no. We make them all into Minecraft metal cubes, and then we just build something with them. We build like the monument of dickheads. Do you know what I mean? Eternally to be. Oh, no, I've got a better one. Right, so we make them into Minecraft cubes, and then they get sent all around the world for dog parks as pissing cubes for the dogs.
Yeah.
Nailed
I like that idea. That's much better.
That's
yes,
almost as good as my idea of getting hollow speed bumps with nails that go in and out, but the pointy bits go in the way, and that's what we do with the pedophiles. No one would object to speed bumps if they knew there was a pedophile getting jabbed every time they drove over the speed bump. In fact, people would be like, 4 more speed bumps, please. Bring them on. It'd be amazing.
You could have them all just down one road. You know, it could be a road of speed bumps. You know, called Pedo Row.
Pedo Row. And you just go 4x4 in there at the weekend. Fucking hell.
Yeah,
just turn it into a skate park. Just fucking hell. Right, okay, so listen. Tonight, a very much unscheduled live stream. I need to get this done. We need to talk about this. But Mo, listen, next week, thank you very, very much. And thank you very much for covering the topic as always so well. No you're an absolute legend. And for you lovely people out there who fancy a little bit more, then stay tuned, because once I line this up, we need to definitely talk about this gentleman here. I'm sure you all know who this is. Okay, we need to talk about Jeffrey. There's a lot of stuff that we need to get through on this, because there is a lot of stuff to be covered, and a lot of it is being completely ignored. And yeah, so rather than make a big video and have YouTube take it down, and we're going to talk a little bit about ghosts in the system, about anomalies at YouTube, about inside people, and about genuine like madness that went on Twitter yesterday. And we're going to cover that. We need to look into a few things, and a lot of this goes back to the MySpace era. So what time is it now? It's 20 past, so you're probably talking 20 minutes this will be up and ready to go. So go and get a coffee, and I will see you all there. And Mo, as always, thank you so much.
Listen, if anybody wants to know about the terrapins and stuff,
tell us about terrapins.
Your stuff.
Oh,
no, I'll do it. You need to go and do your thing.
We need to hear about the terrapins, man. We need to hear about the terrapins.
No, they can come and see it. I'm streaming at 6:30 tomorrow morning. They can come and watch it on my thing. I'll do a particular story for it.
We'll do terrapin update tomorrow. So yeah,
I'll be doing my usual morning coffee shit in the morning. I'm doing it at 6:30 now, so I don't wake up the good lady or have the kids running around at the time. So I'll be up at streaming that at 6:30. My papers, my coffee, my porridge, and I'll finish up tomorrow with the story of the terrapins. I just won't have you're laughing about it, because it's great to share this story with you. Dude. So that is just on my channel. You can see at the bottom.
Get the terrapin update. Sure.
Terrapin update tomorrow. You'll be able to see it on. It'll be uploaded afterwards automatically. But radioapocalypse.live/YouTube, and that will take you to my channel. And you'll have the terrapin update. Okay.
All right. Well, listen, Mo. Thank you. Awesome as always. Thank you everybody in the side chat. Thank you everyone for your support. Thank you for the likes, the comments. Make sure you subscribe, and stay tuned. Main channel, RSI tonight. Special report. We need to talk about Jeffree Star. I'll see you all there. Love you guys.
standing there, a big bright destiny. Don't you feel like breaking free? Open your eyes, embrace what you see now. Don't you feel